Good morning, guys. Apps with another good report. This volatility has been crazy to hold through, but still hanging in there. Wriggle, 35 bucks. Nice move for LITE. New high on earnings as well. U gap on earnings. Yeah, 41 bucks. Not bad. Not bad. Nice to see. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you. Thanks, dude. Appreciate that. Yeah, Unity, LITE, DOCN. Another one, 45, it looks like. Not bad. Yeah, we'll see how these hold up. A-Lab was another one. Big time volatility yesterday. Closed at 179, 181. Still below the 50 days. So, I really didn't know what Lemonade did in terms of a business until I went to look at dog insurance. And then I realized they do insurance. And I said, hey, they're publicly traded. Yeah, I'm not sure if I would short GDX here. Man, I wish I just had my short from before. I had such a nice short on Nugget. I mean, I covered it really well because it paid so quickly right into the 50-day. But yeah, obviously looking at it, I don't know that I would short this one. I just don't feel comfortable shorting after such a quick move down. A lot of things went green though. So CCJ went green now after pre-trade and then earnings. Yeah. A lot of things though did this, wash out overnight, and then a lot of them had a pretty hard snapback. Even something like NBIS went all the way down to 103, and now we're trading 114, which is, kind of a big gap up when you think about how we were trading yesterday. 5% gap up. Even something like Rigetti up almost $2, 5-6%. Yeah, a lot of things are snapping back this morning. I don't love the price action in iron, and as long as it's under 74.15, really $74, then not the best. Is this a familiar market environment with me? You mean a choppy one? Yes. Yeah, we'll figure out what happens with that Tesla pay package, and then I think maybe or maybe not. Elon mentioned something about humanoid robots tomorrow. I don't know, but we will see. Rocket Lab off the 50. I did close my Rocket Lab yesterday. almost right around this area, actually. So we'll see what happens. A lot of names are kind of doing this exact same thing. What moves did I make yesterday? I cut Rocket Lab. I cut Dell on the close below the 20. What else did I do? I cut Rocket Lab. I cut Dell. Anything else? Oh, yeah, I cut TSM. I tried buying TSM off of the reclaim of the 20 simple moving average. So I tried buying TSM in the morning on the reclaim of the 20, and that did not work too well. But TSM's a slower mover, so it was really not a big deal. Anything else? Yeah, and I see that it's kind of perking up this morning. So yeah, I was just looking at this as a bear flag breakdown where we were, kind of gapping down from prior day close. And then, I'm not necessarily looking to short it as it's breaking down. I'm more so looking to short it into some of this strength. So once we started to consolidate and roll over, that's when I was starting to get short. So that's it. Just a bear flag breakdown. I had this thing, and I'm kind of kicking myself, obviously, because I had this thing at 42.5 right in here. And I ended up getting stopped out on this day here when it just spent all day grinding higher. I ended up getting stopped out for effectively a flat trade. And then I didn't short it on Monday on this breakdown, unfortunately. So, I kind of chased my short a little bit lower. So this pop's not, while it sucks, it's a little bit expected. But a lot of stocks had a bunch of panic last night. Whether you were looking at the NKD, right? This is a market that's been going pretty vertical as well. And then all of a sudden last night you got a pretty big washout, and then tonight you're kind of gapping up. Well, it looks a little bit like the NQ where you got a pretty big washout, not huge, but a washout nonetheless. And then now we're kind of pushing in pre-market. Then that kind of translates to, all the stocks we're seeing at the moment. Any plans with AMD? Nothing. No plans with AMD. No plans with ALAB. I'm just going to let them trade. AMD is trying to hold on to its 20 simple moving average. So for now, I'm just going to let it trade. I don't really see a clean, tight setup here anyway. So just kind of let it trade, and then we'll deal with it a little bit later. Yeah, XPEB's got a pretty big base. And this one with the overnight gap up as well. Don't really have a great entry for this thing. Probably would have to be over $24 at some point. I don't understand what you're asking here. Do all bull and bear markets make the turn because of a major fundamental reason? I don't understand the question, though. What would be the major fundamental reason? Sometimes markets bottom on bad news, right? And sometimes markets top on, on what would be great news, apparently. So I don't understand the question. Yeah, I'm already short Oklo from $145, and I did trim some off this day here at like $125. It was like the fourth day I had it. So yeah, we're just hanging out with Oklo for now. Not really too concerned about it, to be honest with you. Part of me thinks Oklo's going back sub 100, but it'll take some time. So if I stopped you out yesterday, yeah, I mean, a lot of people got stopped out of stuff yesterday. I mean, you got to manage risk, right, in real time. Nobody knows if yesterday's lows or last night's lows is the ultimate bottom. Nobody really knows. But it feels like we're in for some more chop here before things get a bit easier. It depends what we're looking at. Like there are groups out there, for instance, like rare earths, like these got absolutely smoked. Something like Oklo, again, we were just looking at it. I mean, this got hit pretty hard. You go from 190 down to 112. I mean, that's a 40% drawdown. And in this instance here, it happened in 6 days. So 40% drawdown in 6 days, that's kind of a lot. So could it get worse? Yeah, it can get worse. No, I'm not still long Baba. I closed Baba days ago. I bought Baba on 1024. I closed Baba on 1030. It was just not going anywhere. My plan isn't to get aggressive today. Maybe there is a setup that I like and I just don't know what it is, but I'll go through my watch list at the market open. I'll try to figure out where money's going. If that's semiconductors and AMD starts acting well and ALAB starts acting well and NVIDIA stays acting well and AVGO is acting well still and TSM starts to come back to life, maybe there's something to do, like a small piece of a semi or something like that. Or I don't really care for a banking name. So that's just kind of my thinking. We'll see. I don't know yet, to be honest with you. We'll see what happens at the open. Does the gap up, which is now what we're getting, get sold into? I don't know. But one name at a time. How do I work out where to put my stop loss? In most instances, it's at low of day. Sometimes prior low of day. Yeah, it could be. It could be a lot of late stage bases. It might be that, and again, Palantir's been acting so well, but it could be that even a name like Palantir could be a late stage base, and earnings is the thing that topped it. I don't know, right? An immaculate quarter. In this kind of environment, pullbacks to ascending moving averages, I think, are the way. So obviously, you think about what we got over the last few days. You think about the action last night. And then you think about this morning, it's technically on a daily chart, things might be, they might be going up on a smaller time frame, but on a bigger time frame, this could just be a pullback into the ascending 20 and 50. And then as things are starting to turn back up on a smaller time frame, which is just, very small blip in price action compared to the daily, it could just be a pullback to an ascending moving average. So yeah, we'll see. There's no setup here. I mean, very, very strong, but like it's, it has to go sideways and tighten up. Nothing I can do with this at the moment. No plan for Palantir. Not yet. NUAI, wasn't that like, yeah, nah, dude. I'm not trading this. This sporadic volume resembles more like a pump to me than some kind of a stable stock. Yeah, I kind of mentioned the banks yesterday. So Goldman Sachs, hanging in there really well. JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo technically made a high yesterday. So despite what the market was doing, some stocks were acting really well. I would trade the exact same. Strata. Doesn't matter where in the world where I am, I'm trading the exact same way. Yeah, Baidu. I like Baidu. I talked about this one in last night's watch list video. I love the pickup in volume. Yeah, I mean, ORA gapped up on earnings and then just kind of sold off. Um, I don't really see a spot to get long. I like price to flatten out some, so like something like this is where I get way more attracted to an ORA. So I'm going to tell you guys this. The best time to buy stocks is after the market has a correction, and you're then looking to buy the strongest stocks in the market, right? So when you think about right now, it's a little bit of a choppy environment. So when you're noticing you're getting chopped out and stopped out, and you're dealing with chop all the time, you have to just size things down. And really, the market should invite you in, meaning there's follow through on a bunch of stocks, and you're able to get positioned in something, and the market gives you another setup and another one and another one and another one, and everything is following through. That's how you know you're seeing things well, but more importantly, that's how you know you're in a good environment. The market will just be going up, and it seems like everything you're putting your money into is going up, not because you're some genius, but because you're in a good market. And then when you're not trading well, you just have to size things down. You entered on 1024, you sold some into strength, and yeah, oh man, you bought perfectly. If you bought on 1024, then yeah, you're sitting great. Just probably using the 20 simple moving average as your stop now. How much tolerance to losses do I have to understand that the entry tactic is not applicable for the current market condition? So, like for instance, breakouts at the moment are very, very choppy. It only takes me a handful of losses to recognize that and then want to start buying against ascending moving averages. So pullbacks. So I did it in a super hot market, and I did it doing something with sympathy plays. So the way it worked is back in 2020, in particular 21, we had like these lead runners, and it didn't matter what it was. It could have been like, and I've talked about this before. Does anybody remember TCAT? Right. And this thing went from like singles all the way to $70. Well, along that run, you had a DLPN, right? And every time TCAT, I would literally have TCAT up on my screen. And then the moment that TCAT would start moving, I would start buying into DLPN, knowing that that's the place that everybody would go next. And I would take like the very easy scalp, but I would just do things with bigger and bigger size. Um, Similarly, when we had SPI go from $1 to 46 on like over a billion shares traded, I just found the sympathy play to Sun W, and I started buying Sun W like high 80 cents, 90 cents, $1, $1.20, $1.30, and in the same day it went to $4. So it's like, no, it didn't go to 46, but it went from basically $1 to 4. That kind of move. And I'm putting my entire account in there because like I know psychologically, one, I'm adding to my winner because my average was lower, and I just kept adding and adding and adding. But I knew we would get a bigger move because of what just happened, right? So it's all about finding that sympathy play, and I was really good at doing that. And back in that hot market, it worked really well because there were so many people trading at home, so many new traders, and they would just start piling into the next thing that they thought could move. That's why like GME never moved on its own. That's why it was GME first, then AMC, right? And those were such liquid big movers that it also caused costs. It also caused Express EXPR. It also caused NACD. It caused so many other movers. And similar, like when you had oil stocks moving, right? That's then when like you got your CEI, right? Or when you had like your big move in oil, then you had like your Indo make a really big move. Then all of a sudden you had like HUSA and IMPP and MXC, etc. And so it's like I knew to look for that, and I would just go into some days and, make 10, 12, 20, 30, 50% of my account. Because I was getting very, very, very aggressive putting, all of my portfolio into stuff as I was growing it. And I wasn't, and there were times like, and that's how I got kicked off, where I would be trading against TCAT, trading DLPN, and like I'm making, I would take like 40,000 shares, and you would get like a 50 cent to like a $1 move, because they were kind of low float, and I would get like a 50 cent to a $1 move like within 3 minutes. So it's like I literally just made 20, 30, 40,000 bucks in 60 seconds, 2-3 minutes of my life, something like that. And then I would just be exiting my position and rebuying a dip. And as long as TCAT was still going, I'd be buying some more. And yeah, that's kind of how I played it. So, but I don't recommend anybody do that. It's an environment thing more than anything. You can't just up and trade like a jackass. So that's exactly what worked in 2021, but I don't recommend anybody do that. Am I looking to buy Ethereum at this price? I don't buy things that are showing relative weakness. Could Ethereum have bottomed yesterday? Maybe. If I were watching it yesterday and I were trading Ethereum futures, maybe buying it against the 200 simple moving average and then having that as a spot to risk off of, fine. But this looks like terrible price action to me. It literally could have been that it bottomed yesterday, but I don't know that for sure. So is this an unusual choppy market? No, it's like any other market. I like PARR. Yeah, that's a really nice oiler. Nice comeback yesterday, too. I saw this one yesterday. Rig I don't like as much, but it is above the 200. Not bad. Any shorts on my radar? Yeah, I mean, there might be a few, right? There might be something like Carvana that's pretty interesting. Right? We'll see what happens if and when this thing breaks the 200. Or, if by chance this thing comes back up to the 50-day and starts to reject just like it did up here. Who knows? We're kind of in this weird moment where it might be a little too late to short, but it might be a little too early to go long. So for me, it's just hands off for the moment. I have 5 trading monitors. I think I've posted it online before on my X. But yeah, maybe I'll get another photo up. BE, a little extended, not much of a setup here. Right? There's not much to do with BE. It's up more than 4 times its ATR from the 50. NBIS got crushed the other day. And a little wide and loose. Maybe today, if it had come down to the 50-day during regular hours, then I could have done something in here, but not really anything I can do. The memory names keep holding up. Yeah, I just don't see the spot on XPEP just yet. Do like the strength, though. Same with Baidu. BTU, man, this thing has made a really big move up recently. Yeah, I liked it as a bounce off the 50-day. I don't see a spot for it just yet, but it's looking pretty good. On the left, I'm looking at the daily. On the right, I'll look at smaller time frames, like the hour all the way down to the 5-minute. For the 620 entry, do you wait for the 5-minute candle to close? And is the stop is at the low of that candle? No, the stop is at the low of the pivot on the 5-minute chart. So if you get a 620 setup, Let me see if I can pull up an example here with NBIS. So can I go back far enough? Yeah. So NBIS, when it was pulling back into the 50-day right here, effectively this is your entry and your stop is right down here. Right? So it's like, you've got about a 2.5%, 2.4% stop roughly, something like that. I don't know so much that the market is in a correction as much as other individual groups are in a correction. Like food stocks are in a correction, right? But again, I don't know that the word correction is really even applicable to the market. But for sure, there are groups like the food stocks. Like when you look at Chipotle, this is in a big correction. When you look at Kava, another food stock, this is in a big correction. When you look at Shake Shack, this is in a big correction. When you look at Cake, right, this is in a correction. So like certain groups are in corrections, other groups are acting really, really well, and they're just pulling back from their all-time highs like the SMH, right? This is not really, we can't really determine that this is in some serious correction just yet. Gilead, this is in the Gilead is a little bit on the slower side, but it's in the XLV ETF. It's one of the top 10 weighted names within the XLV, and this one looks like it's trying to turn up with like names like Intuitive Surgical as well. TMO is another one. So yeah, I was looking at these yesterday. So I mean, my thoughts on Gilead are it's in a group that looks like it might be trying to turn around. John, I just realized you just asked about TMO. Yeah, it's also in the XLV ETF. How fast do I move from size down to full position size? It takes me getting a little bit of traction. Two, three stocks that I gain traction on smaller position size. So, Pinduo Duo. I don't know. I'm going to let these things trade at the open for just a little bit. I don't have to buy PDD right away. But PDD, BABA, looks good. Yeah, I do like XPEV. Yeah, Indo was definitely a crazy one back then in 22. But again, similarly, sympathy plays worked well. So you had like your Indo, and then what else moved behind Indo? Well, HUSA and IMPP, right? Like HUSA went from like, I think like, I don't remember what the hell it was, but I think in like a day or two, it's like from 5 to 15, right? So it's that kind of predictable move behind one that goes crazy because human psychology goes, oh my God, I missed Indo. What's the next one? Well, when everybody starts looking for the next one, that's when you can get yourself a pretty big move. Yeah, I really did get lucky in that environment. Yeah. And like the Oilers, that was about the only real place that I made meaningful money in 2022. And then, the rest of the year was kind of choppy until the end of the year. Yeah, I do look at extended hour action, but there are times when you just can't trade it. So like with CRDO or even that MBIS, like this pullback to the 50, right? This is when this was already outside of regular market trading hours, effectively, even when the market was closed after 7 p.m. my time. So not really much I could do with that. You're struggling a lot to scale up in 5 years of trading foreign exchange markets. Why don't you trade the U.S. stock market? And you don't need more than, dude, you don't need like some big money to start. I think there's like some big misconception. Like, get away from the idea that you're trying to make big money when you start, and focus more on learning how to trade properly, where like you can be wrong a lot but still make money when you're right. Um, I think that's like way more important. And then like once you trust yourself, like with a $5,000 account, that like you can make money and you're up 50% on the year, and then the next year you're up another 50 or 100%. And then you start to trust yourself because you're doing the right thing. You've built the proper habits. Then all of a sudden you can start to deposit some of your work money into your account because you're not going to blow it up. And then, go from there. But, like there's this misconception that like you can't trade if you don't have 100 grand. Like you can trade. You're just trying to learn. That's important, right? It's a life skill. So, what do I need to see to get back to risk on? Here's the thing. We are in an uptrend. So it's still risk on. It's just tread more lightly. Yeah, Christian, I do. Yep. Yeah, I've had it for I don't know, about 6 months or so now. Closer to 7. Yeah, I think TMO looks great. I think TMO looks great. It's in the right XLV sector that looks like it's just trying to turn up. CRS. Yeah, this is a beast. Ideally, this thing just goes sideways a little while longer, but it looks good. The GGAL is interesting because it's in the Argentinian sector. And you'll notice like GGAL, right, with this big gap up and then some kind of, just follow through, looks a little like YPF as well. Right? Looks a little like SUP V. The gap up and then the grind higher. My thoughts are that as long as the ARGT ETF is acting well, right, where you get the gap up and then the grind higher, then a lot of the stocks will probably just follow. So if you're going to be trading GGAL, you need to be watching ARGT. Was there news on PL this morning? What was that? Somebody just show up for 80,000 shares for no reason? Yeah, maybe PL when it gets back above the 20 simple moving average. AEHR is kind of a laggard in the semi space. Like if I'm going to go buy a semi, I don't think it would be that one. Microsoft, there's nothing to do with Microsoft. Why are you afraid of swinging? Because you just don't understand what you don't understand. So, and day trading, scalping is not scalable. It's not that it sucks. One, it's like you imagine having to come in with a bright idea every single day of your life to make money. That's kind of, that's a terrible way to live. Like that forces you to be at the desk, right? I don't have to be at the desk. I choose to be at the desk. There's a difference. And you're afraid of swinging because you just don't understand what you don't understand. I think that's the problem. Like, of course, like with swinging, here's the reality. I make money and plenty of it, but I'm wrong 65% of the time. Imagine you can be wrong 65% of the time and make money. With scalping, to make money, you want to be right like 90% of the time. And when I was a scalper, that's what I was right. I was right 90% of the time. Why? Because my scalps lasted a minute and I was just buying a little bit of a pullback to an area of prior resistance and playing the teeny tiny little bounce, sometimes less than a minute, right? And so I would just see my money and I'd take it off the table, see some money, take it off the table. Then I was like, oh, sympathy plays. Wow, okay, look at how far this one went. Let me hold on to it just a little bit longer. And then I started to study, some people who had 20 plus years of success in the stock market, and they're all swing traders, right? And I was just like, okay, we're focused on groups. We're focused on leaders. These are clean technical setups. When do you buy it? After the market's had a correction. What do they act like when the market's having a correction? It's like you start to put all the pieces of the puzzle together and things really start to make a ton of sense. And I'm still wrong, even when things make a ton of sense. But I don't need a bunch of winners. Like there was a moment in October and I posted this as a reply to Jeff, um, Jeff's son, for anybody not familiar. I had like 12 losing trades in a row, and you would be like, holy cow, like what? Except I only lost 1.5% of my portfolio, a 1.5% drawdown on 12 trades. Well, what happened with trade number 13? It made up, right? It was my Rigetti short from 55 down to 35. It made up for those 12 losing trades. Well, what else took place in that time? I also had UAMY and Nugget, and those were even bigger than my Rigetti trade. So it's like, now all of a sudden I'd have to take 25, 30 losses in a row just to give back what I made on those other two trades. So it's like I could be wrong a ton and still make a shitload of money, just because when I'm in something that's working, I'm patient. So yeah, it's just like kind of a good way to look at it. It's why swing trading, in my opinion, is much better with way less stress. Do I care more what the general market did the last few days, or only on the day of buying to determine your entry tactic, pullbacks or breakouts? No, I mean, I do care of the market that we're in, right? And it feels like the market is trying to have a correction. I don't know if that's true, but it feels like the market is trying to have a bit of a correction. But I still don't think that breakouts here are the way to go until the market actually has a real correction, like 7% or more. So with that kind of thinking, pullbacks to ascending moving averages is about the only way that I'm willing to buy things right now. And then when I go to execute on a smaller time frame, I want the market pushing up for the day in which I go to execute. Oh, that's funny. What does my monitor setup look like? I'm staring at a 34-inch curved straight ahead of me. I've got another 34-inch curved directly above that. And then I've got three 32-inch verticals on either side of me. And then I've got a 27-inch vertical that's run by my laptop. So I've got way more monitor space. And I'm looking at about 40 individual stocks at one time. And I'm looking at all the futures markets. CRML, this isn't a high volume close. This is a piece of shit that just got destroyed. So does it eventually make some kind of a bounce? Yeah, maybe. But when a stock goes from 32 back to 10, you shouldn't be thinking about CRML as a high volume close. Yeah, they're definitely showing some relative strength, but my thinking is with iron was this just was a just your regular double top short sale. You kind of hit this peak, you sell off, you try to rally back, and then you kind of stay heavy yesterday. We're gapping up a little bit in pre-market right now, but and yes, they've been definitely showing some relative strength. But so are the quantum, so are the rare earth stocks, so are the nuclears. Everything has its moment under the sun. Yeah, Feisty, I talk about all of that. I literally talk about my entries and my exits and my plan with the trade, and I talking about it in real time. I'm streaming while I'm trading. Yeah, I am looking at these names that are gapping up on earnings, but I'm not looking to trade them on day one. I'm looking for high volume close setups, or I'm looking for they'll gap up and then they'll tighten up just a little bit, and then I can kind of go get them. So no, progressive exposure is not on one of my positions. It's on my portfolio. Right. So I mean, I'll pyramid into stock as it's working, but progressive exposure is more about thinking about your portfolio and how you're getting fully invested into the market, right? Like, let's just say I had no exposure to the market, and then the market gives me a follow through day. Well, on that follow through day, I can get 20% of my portfolio on, maybe 30%. And then I build from there, right? Because on a follow through day, I should have, 2-3 stocks that are potentially in viable positions. But progressive exposure is from the portfolio level, not from the individual stock level. I've been kind of around 50% invested for the last 60% invested for the last few weeks. I'm like 26% invested right now. So I got knocked out of a few things yesterday. A new trader should note down his entry, his exit, his position size, the time of the day that he took the trade, the entry tactic that he used to get in, whether it was just a simple 5-minute opening range break or a 620 setup or a break of a key moving average or just a earnings gap up, high volume close. Like, what was the setup that you were trading? What was the entry tactic you used to get in? How much did you buy? What percent of your portfolio was that? What was your entry? What was your exit? When were your trims? When was your full exit? Why did you exit completely? Why did you trim? Right? These are, if you're going to write it down, those are the things you really want to know. What group is it in? How was the market acting at the time that you bought it? How was the group acting at the time that you bought it? Yes, I do use extended hour charts when applying, but my entries come intraday. What percent is full size and small size? You have to also take into account how quickly a stock moves with its ADR. If it moves very, very quick, then I size things down. So, but just say that on a typical position, 10%. On a stock that moves like 5% per day in terms of ADR, 10% per day is really kind of where I stay. Thoughts on SYM? This one hurts to look at. I owned it at 50. I owned SYM right here as it was reclaiming the 50-day. And then I got stopped out right here, unfortunately. Should have bought it back on 10-1, but I did not. EQT, that's a nat gas name. I like EQT as a business. Yeah, big base. I think EQT is nat gas, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, VLO. Yeah, very nice. MPC is another one. Yeah, AEHR is not bad. Kind of a laggard in the semi space, but yeah, it's doing all right. That's too big of a universe. You have a tradable universe of 1,600 stocks. That's far too many. One of the ways that you can shrink that list down is eliminate stocks that are trading, less than 25, 30, 40 million dollars a day. Eliminate stocks that are illiquid, and then eliminate stocks that are trading, sub 3% ADR per day. There's a link on my YouTube, Christian. You work 9 to 5. You need a strategy to trade. Swing trading, definitely not day trading. Yeah, LMND. I would like to just see it trade today, and then if it gives me a high volume close, great. Well, that's a great question, Daniel. I don't know what you don't know. That's the thing. So first, that's the first step. Like for anybody that I talk to within the Discord, I need to figure out what it is you don't know, and then we go from there. 8-figure contract with renewal with an international defense and intelligence customer. Sounds pretty vague, but all right. I'll believe it. Biohaven, down 40%. FDA issues complete response letter to Biohaven's drug. SMCI thoughts, it's gapping down on earnings. There's nothing to think about. Right? Why do I have to think about a stock that's been doing absolutely nothing? It's in a stage 1 base, and it just gapped down on earnings. Yeah, and I'm making more. I do have an archived videos really talking about whether it be progressive exposure or there's a lot of videos within the Discord. So talk about, flipping from long to short, talk about trimming some into strength, trimming from the 50 simple moving average. all sorts of educational videos, but more are coming talking about the individual setups. I'm like just under 30% exposure at the moment. You're reading Trading in the Zone. Can I talk about your mental game a little? To be honest with you, I really don't think too much about the psychology of trading. I just do the same thing over and over and over without really getting too emotional about it. It's like I either understand where I want to buy or I don't. I either size things properly or I don't. I mean, I typically, I feel like it's an emotional intelligence thing to know to not oversize, to know to be patient in your winner when you have one, to just comfortably trail something when you're in it. Yeah, I don't really think about the mental game too much. You know, you got to eat well for the most part, and you got to get some good sleep. If you do those two things, then you have a clear mind going into work. That's really it. Time to stack two 57-inch monitors. Yeah, probably. Yeah, they say the more monitors, the more money you make. That's what I've heard. Please detail a high volume close. Yeah. So look at Sezzle. This is last quarter or 2 quarters ago. You get a gap up. You see this unusual volume that came in. That was because of earnings. Then you just take the plot the close, and then you buy it through the close, and then there's your move. Right? Dave did something very similar. It was trading pretty, just mundane volume, and then all of a sudden, boom! What the hell is that volume bar that just came in? That's on earnings, and then you plot the close and good above the close, bad below. Right? Very, very simple, very simplistic setup. FSLR has been tough to do anything with it. So it's in an uptrend, but I just don't see a spot how I can get involved in this thing. I've been watching this name for well over a month, but there's just not a setup to get long. They're just kind of grinding it higher. Are most of your entries based on intraday trading, or do you ever set up your buys prior to market opening? So like trade pre-market? No, not really. So there's no need for me. There's normally even not enough liquidity. Um, there's not enough liquidity for me to take in pre-market or to be able to take a trade in pre-market. So, no, I mean, I might not be completely hands off today. There might be a setup I can take. Um, so we'll see. I just don't know what that setup might be. Right? It would probably be in one of the leading sectors. More than likely, it would have to be something like semiconductors. But, that's about it. Yeah, Kelvin, I will. I'll make like a promo for Black Friday for everybody, for anybody who wants to be in there and try the room. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you guys all. You guys are awesome. Awesome questions today. I felt like a pretty great discussion. You guys made the morning fly by. And I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Please be safe out there. Remember to use progressive exposure. You don't have to go from 20% invested to 100% invested in a day, right? If we're in a good market, which we've been, the market has to pull you in. If it can't pull you in, then you should not be getting aggressive. So clean setups, clean entries, proper position size, keep yourself out of harm's way. I will see you guys tomorrow morning. Have a great trading day.